Dead on Your Feet, Arthur Grant Michaels, St. Martin's Press, New York, 1993. Stan Kraychik Mystery, Book 3, narrator Eric Aust. In memory of Tajana and Andre, with gratitude and respect and love, thanks to the patience and generosity of my friends. Chapter 6. You Don't Know What Love Is. Originally, I had planned to make Rafik one of his favorite dishes for dinner. Chicken breast braised in butter and olive oil, with fresh rosemary and chopped tomato, topped with a thin slice of Monterey cheese. Yes, I was resorting to food as a way to reconcile us, but I'd planned that meal before I had learned of Rafik's Nuit d'Amour with Tony Di Natale. Now it was easier to settle on frozen appetizers and a 3-cheese calzone from the local pizzeria. The food would be good enough, but it paled in comparison to my first menu, the one inspired by love. And the prefab meal would be a drastic come down from the culinary experience at Max Harkey's place only 24 hours earlier. At one juncture, I even considered serving everything at room temperature, especially after hearing my Aunt Letta's counsel in my mind. You don't give a man a hot meal when he has been with another woman. Never! Who would have thought a gay man would be contending with that kind of conjugal logic? But my heart softened while I was puttering around the kitchen, laying out the frozen appetizers on a cookie sheet and preparing my battle plan. It happened when I took a new look at the refrigerator. It's covered with photos and postcards and magnets, some erotic, some silly, all little scraps of things that delight me. The collection had become invisible to me, as things on refrigerator doors tend to do, especially those little signs that say, "Are you really hungry?" or the more direct, "No!" What got to me was the snapshot of Rafik and me during our first honeymoon vacation. We had spent a weekend in Maine, and the photo showed us both on the beach. A passing hunk had snapped it for us. As different as Rafik and I were physically, the photo could have been used as state's evidence that we belonged together. There we were, embracing like young buddies in the sudsy white surf. We appeared so animated that I could almost hear the waves again and feel the cold droplets of ocean water falling from Rafik onto me, and taste the sun and the salt on his forearm, the one he'd wrapped around my neck. It was a cliché, a snapshot of two men stupidly in love at the beach. Every person who's ever had a lover must have some version of this photo. I almost resented the effect it had on me, but I also knew that I wanted that again. I wanted those joyous times again, when being together was so easy because we were enchanted with each other's minds and bodies. As I prepared the salad greens, I wondered how life might be if things didn't work out. If we ended up separating, with a sinking feeling I recalled my life before Rafik, how I'd made myself strong to withstand the loneliness. Sure, I had tried practical ways to fill the void, placing and answering personal ads, accepting blind dates arranged by married friends, taking up country western dancing, and joining bridge clubs and attending bingo parties, but they usually resulted in dire incompatibility or else outright rejection. The ideal of creating a social life for myself had seemed a reasonable solution, but in practice it was as romantic as driving a dump truck. So, to handle the ever-growing frustration, I had cultivated a peculiar vision, one that focused, however, narrowly on the bright side of life. Happy thoughts only. Head up, move forward. He travels fastest who travels alone. Cha-cha-cha. The only question then was, with all my speedy, independent, positive, forward-moving activity, where exactly was I going? Then Rafik appeared, with his halo of danger, and possessed me at once. Every second with him sent some piece of my former life into the archives of memory or else to oblivion, and whatever I lost made room for something new, some new emotion, sensation, elation, or doubt. But the anticipation of these thrilling new experiences also had the odd effect of diminishing that old independence, that self-reliance that had become my strength. Occasionally I even found myself hoping that Rafik would confidently chart the course for our life, together in the same magical way he had solved the pain of my body's needs. I knew there was plenty of terms that described this submissive condition. transference, codependence, dysfunction, sadomasochism, love. But in my heart, I also knew that the subjugation of oneself to another person has been around a lot longer than ever, either classical or New Age psychologies and their intended labels. Just take a look at grand opera if you don't believe me. So for whatever reason, whether conscious choice or inescapable destiny, Rafik's life and mine had become intertwined, and there was no turning back. The door buzzer startled me out of my grim reverie. I took stock of what I'd been doing. All was perfect except for the onion. I'd intended to slice paper-thin rings to lay on top of the salad, but instead I'd reduced it all to a mushy particle smaller than rice grains. No wonder the tears were running down my cheeks. Stay alert, I told myself, or he will charm you into agreeing that he slept with Tony DiNatale as a favor to you. And then he'll expect that the favor to be returned. Become strong, Stanley. But my attempts at self-bolstering withered when I opened the door and saw him standing there, as if the vision of him in the flesh weren't enough. Tired from work, posture a bit slack, small wane, yet those eyes ever eager, as if all that weren't enough to undo me. The bastard had even brought me flowers, and my favorite no less. An armful of rubrum lilies. What chance did I have? How could I be angry when he'd entered like that? He stepped inside and we held each other. I sensed that he needed tenderness from me, the very thing I had neglected to give him earlier that day. I'd been through police stress like that myself, and if I'd had a lover at the time, I would have wanted him to comfort me, to help me forget it all. I certainly hadn't done that for Rafik. I told myself to forgive and forget any mistakes either of us had committed recently. Then I realized I was thinking like a Sunday school teacher. I spoke into his ear. "You smell good," Rafik said. "I showered at studio." He sniffed at the air. "Something is baking?" So he did want a wife after all. Well, what else was I going to do with my life? "I left the shop too early to make a real dinner," I said. "But I've got some stuff in the oven." I was careful not to apologize, not to yield, but I did feel a twinge of guilt for not preparing him a full meal with my own hands. Sugar Baby greeted him enthusiastically, as she usually did, by wrapping both her forepaws around one of his legs and nuzzling him with her cheeks. Rafik released me and knelt down to face her at her level. He held his hand out, palm down in front of her, about half a foot off the floor, and she promptly leaped over it. He raised his hand an inch, and she jumped again. This continued until his hand was too high for Sugar to negotiate the jump, at which point she simply flopped herself down and squirmed about on the carpet while he tickled her silky underside. Rafik had taught her the trick just after we had met, and Sugar Baby still did it only for him. We had cocktails in the living room, so I guess it was a special occasion after all. Though I didn't realize yet to what extent I served the hot appetizers, small turnovers filled variously with minced mushrooms, chopped spinach, and herbed cheese. In Armenian, they are called boreg, pronounced approximately bareg, with lots of roll on the R's. Rafik bit into one happily, and golden beauty flakes of phyllo pastry fluttered from his lips onto his plate. "It is good," he said, "but yours are better." "You taught me how," I replied with a modest shrug. Step by step, domestic harmony was being reinstated. So, like the devoted wife who is ever watchful over her husband's career, I brought up something I'd neglected to tell Rafik so far. "Last night at Max Harkley's, I overheard an argument I think you ought to know about." "Between which people?" he said, and took another boreg. "Max Harkey and Marshall Zander?" "It was about your new work." "Oh, tell me then." "Max sounded adamant about taking it off the program." "What do you mean, adamant?" "Determined, unyielding, adamant," he said with a French accent. Then he shrugged and sighed. "What does it matter now? It will not happen." "Not so, dearly beloved. Marshall Zander sounded just as adamant about keeping your new work on the program." "Ha!" said Rafik. "Then why did he tell the police those things about me? He tells them I killed Max Harkley because my new work will not be shown, so the police asked me if that is true. So you knew about it? From the police, yes. But why does Marshall lie to them about me? Why does he hate me? Possibly not hate, thought I, but it's polar opposite. Fortunately, Rafik, the police didn't believe him. They did book Tony, not you, but I also recalled Branco using the word accessory that afternoon at the shop. Rafik said, "The police know that Max left her for somebody else, so they think she kills him for that." He shook his head in dismay. Marshall Zander told me that you and Tony were in the bedroom together when the police arrived. Rafik looked at me sadly. "We did not know what to do about Max. We arrived there. We find him like that. We were scared." I got up to check on the calzone in the oven. As I was leaving the living room, I said, "I sure hope you're not involved in this thing." Rafik joined me in the kitchen. "Something makes you not trust me, Stenny." I was kneeling at the open oven. "It's nothing," I said. "What happened?" "Nothing, I told you. I didn't mean to mention it." "Did someone say something?" I closed the oven door and stood up to face him. "It was the police." "What did they say?" "It was about you and Tony." "What?" he said with a beguiling and boyish smile, and with his hands open toward me, raised in supplication. Perhaps if he hadn't affected humility and innocence, I could have let the matter go, but Rafik's sudden theatricality raised a red flag to me, and I sensed that he was hiding something. "Okay, then, love, tell me what you did last night after the party." "I went home, of course." "Of course you did. Were you alone?" Rafik paused. "Why do you ask me this?" "Just answer me, light of my soul. Did you sleep alone last night?" "Yes, I did," he said flatly. I got the plates from the cupboard and made sure to slam the door closed. Then I set the dishes down on the counter with a heavy clunk. But selecting the flatware was the high point. Do you know how much noise you can make getting knives and forks out of a cutlery tray? I figured if I was about to face the showdown I'd been avoiding, I wanted the whole kitchen vibrating with the energy of my anger. "Rafik, the police told me that you and Tony spent the night together, that you are her alibi." "So?" he said coolly. "Have you never spent a night with a woman? Sly bastard." "Not when I already had a lover and you just said you slept alone." "I did. It is not what you think. We did not sleep together." "Rafik, I know your room. There's a bed and a chair and a table." "Steady. Believe me, I only talk with her. She has a broken heart for Max. You know I cannot ignore a broken heart. What if I ignored you? Where would we be now?" "Be alert. Clear your mind. Pay no heed to the sexy man in your kitchen saying things to confuse you." But then I thought of Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert and of the hanging blanket that had maintained chastity in a tiny motel room, and I wondered if Rafik was telling the truth after all. Rafik continued, "I see from your eyes that you want to believe me. Let's just say I don't want to disbelieve you." I turned off the oven and we returned to the living room to finish our cocktails. Sugar Baby leaped onto Rafik's lap and nudged his hand for affection. My own pet's allegiance had been swayed. I watched her shamelessly beg him for love. She was enraptured by Rafik. Perhaps there was a simple lesson there. Rafik said, "Maybe you should go with other men so you will be at peace with me." Suddenly my heart was racing and my belly was a knot. "I don't want other men." "Maybe you are lying to yourself." "I may be confused about a lot of things, Rafik, but on that point I'm sure I don't want other men." Yet, as soon as I said it, I recalled the thrill I'd had earlier that day in my small office with Lieutenant Branco, how his touch and his scent had caused an unexpected response in me. "Study, I will talk serious to you now." I felt myself begin to tremble. "No, Rafik, it's not necessary." But he held up his hand to silence me. "It is time to talk. I am thinking about this a lot. I know that my work often makes a problem between us, so I am thinking that perhaps you should go from me." "No!" I do not want it, but you are so unhappy. I'm not unhappy. This is the way I am. It was shocking to hear Rafik talk about our connection, our love, as though it was something that could be turned on and off at will. So what was I supposed to do now? Did he want me out of his life? These kinds of hurdles in the realm of love seemed too complex for me, too fabricated. But then, I'm only a hairdresser. Rafik was a murder suspect when we met. Rafik, this is absurd. I don't want to leave you. Then we should live together, he said with a satisfied grin. I told you I can't live with you until there is no reason not to. We should be together. I don't know you well enough. How can you say that? It is more than 1 year. Okay then. Say we move in together, and then you get this uncontrollable urge to stay out with someone else while I'm waiting for you at home? Or even worse, what if you brought him home to our bed while I was out, and then I smelled him on the sheets? That's why I can't live with you. For a few moments after my harangue, the only sound in the living room was Sugar Baby's loud, rhythmic purring from Rafik's lap. She always did respond to high energy. Rafik said quietly, I do not want sex from anyone else. How long will that notion last? It's bound to wear off. You'll tire of me and go roving, and then what happens? What do you mean, roving? Having sex with other men. He kicked the edge of the table sharply and jostled everything on it. The noise startled Sugar Baby, and she jumped off his lap and scampered out of the living room. I tell you, Stanny, I will not do that. You did with Danny. That was different. It was the same thing you want now. Two men living together who claim to love each other. Danny did not love me. I was a decoration for him to show to everyone else. Was that how I perceived Rafik? Was my idolatry just another version of decoration? I knew that wasn't true. Rafik, I want us to live together. It's a beautiful dream I have every day. I just couldn't face the pain if it didn't work out. I felt my eyes filled with tears, but there was no way I was going to cry out loud, not with Rafik present. It will work, Stanny. I will always be here for you. The last man who said that to me went off with someone else 2 days after our first disagreement. Then he was a weak man. He blamed me for everything. I will never blame you for anything. He lied to me, beautiful lies that I believed. I will never lie to you. He said that too. Steady, you must believe me. I want to, Rafik. How can I prove it to you? I shrugged hopelessly. I don't know. What I do know is that I want you in my life for as long as any cell of mine is conscious, but I have to believe you want the same thing. It's easy to say I love you, and I love you. And it's just as easy to forget someone's name. I will make you believe me. The kitchen timer went off. I looked at Rafik. His eyes were gazing warmly at me, and his face was calm and smiling. Why does his emotions always come off so assured, so comfortable, so masculine, while mine loomed volcanic and larger than life? Yet for all my passionate noise, I felt the lesser person. Let's eat, I said. In the small dining room, we ate the calzone and the salad. For a long time, we didn't speak, as though we were both afraid to talk any more about Max Harkey's murder and Tony Di Natale. But then, what else was disrupting our lives right now? Certainly not Bloomingdale's kitchen sale. Rafik spoke first. Tony could not do such a thing as the police say. Why not? She is a fine artist. She could not kill anyone. If I recall, Floria Tosca lived for art and love, and she did a pretty good job carving up Scarpia. That is opera, he said. Was it my place to remind Rafik that so was his life? What more can be done, I said. Tony has a good lawyer. Rafik put his hand over mine and focused his sweet caramel brown eyes on me. Maybe you can help her? What? You'll remember how you helped me before? I don't want to get involved again. What if you did not help me then? I might be in jail. Rafik, I can't do anything for her. If you love me, Steny, you will help her. Nice ultimatum. Then I recalled Nicole's words from that morning. Stand by your man. So what do you do when the two closest people in your life tell you how to live it? A whirlwind started in my head, and that big question was, why does Rafik care so much about that woman? Was this the kind of stimulation I need to feel alive, to be strong, to be my best self again? I thought romance and security were the driving forces in my life, but apparently it was bloodlust that spurred me on. Maybe I was more macho man than I'd expected. Once I'd faced the demon head on, the answer came quickly and easily. I would help, but it would not be as a favor to Rafik. I wasn't so selfless. I had my own motivation. I would do it for all my own peace of mind. For with Tony Di Natale free of guilt and Rafik free to choose, I would finally know whether his love for me was true or transient, and what he really wanted, a man or a woman. Okay, I said, I'll do whatever I can. Oh, Steny, mercy, mercy! Don't kiss my hands, just tell me something. Anything, whatever you want. Are you willing to lose me? Even in the candlelight I could see his face go pale. It will not happen. I will protect you. Rafik, I appreciate your chivalry, but I'm not talking about physical danger. Yet as I said the words, I realized with a small shudder that the whole ridiculous mission could become fatal at any juncture. After all, the killer was still free. I mean, I said with a dry gulp, if Tony is set free, your relationship with her may grow to preclude me. Rafik looked confused. I do not understand. You might leave me, Rafik. He said the next word like a sacred oath. Never. My heart pounded. My ears rang slightly. I felt pressure in my neck and head, and I saw spots in the warm light. Until death, he added. Perhaps Rafik had meant to galvanize my trust, but somehow with the sharp angles of his face and the flickering light and the solemnity of his words, he'd caused instead an unexpected tremor of fright. Do you want some dessert? I asked. Food. Food? It was always food to the rescue at a bad moment, just like the Brits and their damn tea. Rafik shook his head no. Let's go to bed. When we entered the bedroom, Sugar Baby had already enthroned herself among the pillows at the head of the bed. Rafik pushed me down onto the fluffy duvet. Now I will show you how much I love you, he said. Let's get our clothes off. No, he said. You will lie quietly and I will love you. But, shh. And as he began, he unbuttoned my shirt and purred his face inside, licked my skin with his tongue, nestled his way into an armpit, pulled at the hair with his lips. That's why you must find alternatives to toxic deodorants. All the while, his clever hands were undoing other buttons and buckles. My shirt still on, he nuzzled his way down across my chest, pausing to chew a while on a nipple, then strayed lower where the pleasant pastures lie. With his stalwart nose, Rafik invaded my breast and rooted around in there for a while. When he backed down, I felt him grasp my breast and trouser tops with his teeth. Then, shaking his head like an animal, he pulled out and yanked with his jaws until he peeled pants and panties down off me, never once using his hands. Oh, the relief of cool air on my body. Phase 2 started at my feet, where he paid great respect with tongue and lips to all 10 piglets, and then traced elaborate designs with his pointy tongue on every surface of my feet, especially along the soles. What relief that I'd showered earlier. Then Rafik moved further up and lingered around my calves for an extended chew. At the same time, he curled his body so that his erection could continue playing around on my feet, even working itself between my toes, thrusting like a mini-fuck. How can a penis be so smart? Eventually, Rafik's tongue made its way up to my thighs, where he settled in for a while. Lips and tongue and teeth conversed freely with the tender flesh on the inner side of my thighs, while his hard member toyed with my tootsies. He licked and chewed and pinched within millimeters of pay dirt, breathed his hot breath on it, teased it all plenty, but never made contact with the external center of my sex. The torture made my rod pulse and drool in wild anticipation, ever ready and eager for his lips and tongue, ready for what it seemed would never happen. I wondered, is this how an accessory to murder makes love? Then I wondered, why is it so easy to believe him guilty of something instead of innocent? But finally I surrendered to the pure simplicity of what he was doing, what he was saying, talking without guile to some deep lost part of me and some bold and present part of him. A hand, a lip, a shoulder, a thigh. What did it matter? I was being recharged with zings of electricity, small sparks that grew and intensified into small jolts and caused my muscles to tremble rapidly, then to vibrate, and then to fibrillate, wildly out of control. And once Rafik had got my body into that state of electroshock, he played with it, improvised, navigated his way through the surges and eddies of pleasure, and coaxed from my lungs cascades of whimpers and tremulous wails of astonishment and delight. I heard myself saying, "You do love me. You do love me." And just before I left the earth, I realized I'd stolen the line. 9 days later, so it seemed, when the drama had run its course and I'd regained consciousness, Rafik was stroking my belly gently with a towel. Physically, I was completely spent, yet I sensed something odd with my body, a vague feeling of fullness, of being more than I was before the sex. I supposed it was the afterglow. Then I realized that, despite Rafik's Olympic-class ministrations, I had not let off. And though he had drenched my abdomen with his release, my usual copious climax had been internalized and contained. Well, superb as the sex had been, that's not exactly the way men come, and it troubled me for a moment. Was Rafik now robbing me of genital pleasure too? What was next? No erection? Or had he finally transported me far beyond the meager sensations afforded by a dangling attachment, transported me to the more elevated ecstasies of the soul? "I did nothing for you," I said. "You let me do this," answered Rafik, as though ravishing my body was pleasure enough for him. "And you already made love to me when you promised to help Tony." In the warmth of his presence and the rumbling purr of Sugar Baby, who was lying at our heads, I asked myself, was that love? Later that night, I awoke calmly in the moonlight. I could see Rafik and Sugar Baby breathing together, two of hers to one of his. I wondered how Rafik had managed to change the occasional horrors of life into a creative force. How could anyone make love the way he had after a day like his? He had been inspired, not exhausted in his lovemaking. There was something disturbingly divine about how he could transform the mundane debris he was dealt every day. Maybe that's what ultimately separated the artiste from the ordinary mortal. The normal person resists or ignores or flies from the circumstances at hand, while the artist grapples them and seeks to create something from them, no matter what they are. I resolved to use my artist's lover as an example. I would accept the circumstances of Max Hartley's death as an opportunity to apply myself, body and mind, until I found the killer. That would be my particular piece of creation for the moment. With that decision, I was at peace. A Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold: to offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides, and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.